vibes. It's me, Aaron. Dwight had me pretend to be a hipster to create hype, and it's working. There's already people camped out behind me.
This is wrong. And that was obviously an opinion. The Office is maybe the most successful television show of all time. I've got an entire miniseries on this channel dedicated to just that show. But I think what's most interesting about The Office, years after its run, is how opinion is molded into something nearly ubiquitous around a few of the show's episodes. This is The Entry. It is, in my opinion, the best episode of The Office, and making that video made me cognizant of something else. That's this, Scott's Tots, being considered by many the worst episode of the series. But I wasn't sure I agreed with that, so I did some digging, looked around the internet, and stumbled upon something more than just a tad subjective. Almost objective, if you can even call it that, and what I discovered is that Scott's Tots is not considered the worst episode of the series in terms of ratings. In fact, it doesn't even crack the top 15 lowest rated episodes. So I decided to take a look at what is considered 3 of the show's worst episodes and break down what doesn't work when The Office fails.
The record, not all Italian Americans are in the Mafia.
I think he just seemed like he was trying to sell me insurance.
This episode is a season 6 episode titled Mafia. During the show's run, this episode was considered one of the show's worst. For a while, it was my least favorite episode as well. But unlike the next 2 episodes, it doesn't land here. This is IMDb, something if you're here, I'm sure you're familiar with. It's a rating system that allows viewers to vote on the best and worst of, well, anything, assigning a rating to each episode of the show. Objective in that it creates a ranking based on those votes, subjective in that they're still votes, or ratings. So what is wrong with this? Mafia is a very funny episode of The Office, but it's one of the only episodes in the first 6 seasons that runs the risk of flanderizing the show's characters. If you're here enough, you know what that means, but for those who aren't, flanderization is the act of taking a single trait of a character and exaggerating it to the point where it becomes the character, swallowing the personality whole. Mafia encroaches on this territory big time. Kevin's never been the brightest guy on earth, we know this, but in Mafia, he behaves so incredibly stupidly that he ends up stranding Jim and Pam on their honeymoon after speaking to a banker and having their cards cut off. This is in between him using Michael's office just to flatulate. Pure ineptitude. Meanwhile, Michael mistakes an insurance salesman for a member of the Mafia? Well, that's funny. Well, it would have been funny. Instead, Dwight and Andy convince Michael that he is a member of the Mafia and string Michael along for an entire episode. Problem is, none of them seem to be aware this insurance salesman is just that. Absurd ineptitude. The point here is actually stated by Oscar.
Pam and Jim are on their honeymoon, so there's not the usual balance between sane and others.
By removing Jim and Pam from this episode, you have the chance to give your supporting characters time to shine. Instead, this episode shows every character at their dumbest, most manipulative, and most conspiratorial. The branch doesn't branch out, it flanderizes. This flanderization actually becomes the show's biggest downfall, both early and at the end of the show's run, forcing the show to rewrite Michael after season 1 and reintroduce Andy as essentially an entirely new character after his original guest run had ended. And to complete that, obviously this flanderization was the exact thing that took down the show in the last 2 seasons, specifically with Andy Bernard once again. But to this day, I find Mafia hilarious, even though it does foreshadow the show's eventual issues. So I kept looking.
Val's no help. Andy's gone. Jim's out. I just feel like I'm on my own here.
Remember how I said that Mafia didn't give its supporting characters the chance to shine in personality ways that you'd expect? Well, this is the 15th worst rated episode in the show's entire run. It's the season 9 episode, Vandalism. This is an episode that the industry calls a lower deck episode. A lower deck episode of a show is one that focuses primarily on supplementary or side characters almost exclusively, usually with storylines that don't move the overall narrative forward. At this point in the show's run, the very structure of the episode became one of the show's biggest issues. See, in this lower deck episode, every character behaves, well, in ways that feel a bit inauthentic. And it may not be surprising to note that the lead writer, well, this was only his 3rd credit of that kind, and it was the first episode directed by this man. Pam here is really the primary focus. Someone vandalizes the mural and she goes on the hunt. This ends with a very not Pamish confrontation at the end of the episode that is not as funny as much as it is strange. Daryl becomes a secondary focus. He's sick of dealing with Jim being a slob. But is that how you would describe Jim? I'm betting the answer is no, but it does create conflict. And Angela is throwing a birthday party with the senator. bickering with Oscar along the way, and then being saved by Kevin. This episode isn't just usually unfunny, it often verges on surreal, like a series of deleted scenes or ideas spliced together to create a story. Almost like the budget had run dry and they had to work with what they had. The problem here is that when Michael left the office, the show made a grave error. Instead of trying to replace his presence, they began rotating new presences. It's not just that Michael was a great character, it's that he was the main character, and his presence grounded the show's narrative and structure. When he left, and that presence wasn't filled, the show became incredibly unfocused. As a result, every episode was forced to become a lower deck episode, a style usually relegated to filler episodes of larger seasons of serialized shows. So in turn, what Vandalism represents is the filler that should have been optional, not necessary. Not to mention, this episode carries the Looney Tunes approach that the show veered into here.
Here I am, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours!
Get the Girl. This season 8 episode is the lowest rated Office episode in the show's run. This episode represents almost everything wrong with The Office when it's not at its peak. This episode is what some call a road episode. It's an episode of a series that travels outside of its normal setting, a fancy TV phrase really meaning TV road trip. What really went wrong for The Office towards the end, and even in its failed spin-off episodes, like The Farm, is tonality. More concisely, inconsistency in tonality. As The Office lost focus, so too did its tone. While the show always flirted with the absurd, a lot of the last 2 seasons are pure slapstick. The Office meets Looney Tunes. In Get the Girl, we see a reoccurrence of things The Office had already done better, quite literally. A poor performance review, seen it. A newcomer taking someone's desk, seen it. And potentially job, seen that as well. And a love trip, also seen that. Except here, this B storyline does all of that worse and more absurdly than the show has in the past. Well, except for that road trip. Because more importantly, that B storyline clashes in tone dramatically with its A or main storyline, Andy going to secure his love with Aaron. These are 2 different episodes of 2 different seasons of a show crammed together, and neither work. Andy Bernard's flanderization, full circle, reaches its peak here as his plotline sees him singing, heavy-handedly loving, and reaching in some of the most awkward scenes in the show's history. A culmination, by the way, of a storyline, Aaron and Andy, that didn't work well for nearly 2 full seasons, and yet here it's doubled down on. Again, in the most heavy-handed way possible. No subtlety, and believe me, little humor. This is all interspliced with the pure and utter lunacy of that B storyline. This episode plays like someone punching you in the face and feeding you cake in between each hit. If you're going to try to create emotional weight, you can't lift that weight every 3 minutes and hope it's still there when the audience comes back. Just like in life, emotion is fleeting, and if you get too distracted, well, the moment's gone, and so is the emotion.
Hey, guys, listen up. Michael is up on the roof and acting strange.
As all of you know, I love The Office, and I actually don't hate the final 2 seasons, but it is interesting that the 15 worst rated Office episodes only include 1 coming from another season other than those final 2. To me, The Office is a lesson in what it means to lose sight of your idea. That fleetingness again. When you do for an episode or a moment, like Mafia, it's okay as long as you regain that train of thought. Lower deck episodes, road episodes, even bottle episodes make up the final seasons of a ton of sitcoms. Look at Family Guy, every other episode is a special now. South Park playing with serialization suddenly, and the list goes on and on. When you begin to use new ideas as a crutch, as opposed to a supplement, that's the moment your show has ended, whether you keep making episodes or not. Whether those new ideas are characters, love lines, or specials. So the next time you're writing something, or better yet, watching something, ask yourself this: can what's happening on the screen be described the same way as you would describe the show to your friends if you were recommending it to them? And if the answer is no, how long ago was it when that show or movie series was the thing you used to describe it as? If you can't answer that second question, it might be time to turn off the TV, because someone somewhere has lost sight of their Michael Scott.
This is gonna feel so good getting this thing off my chest.
Well guys, that is it for this episode of Nerdstalgic. As always, if you enjoyed the video, press that like button down below. If you haven't yet done so, hit subscribe so you don't miss anything I upload here on this channel. Obviously, I'm back again. Sorry for the brief hiatus. If you're interested in those 4 or 5 Office videos I've already made, they'll probably be on the end screen here, but they're definitely on my channel. I have a whole Office series. You can check out all those videos there. Talk about a lot of the episodes I talked about here, like the failed Office spinoff, why they changed Michael Scott, how they changed Andy Bernard, all that good stuff. So you can find those on this channel. And on your screen right now are maybe 2 of those exact videos. And hopefully I will see you guys in the next one.